I think housing can take World of Warcraft to the next level. Jeff Kaplan, 2007. Yes, quite an interesting statement, and coming out of the Shadowlands, we have absolutely no idea what to expect from Blizzard, and this gives them an opportunity to advance the story and all those things in Azeroth, but also, perhaps more importantly, give them an opportunity to maybe think about introducing a new system to the game, one that's not hog-tied to an expansion, but that could actually, grow with World of Warcraft. It would be, we think, the perfect time for Blizzard to introduce player housing, and this is our video advocating for it, because God damn it, it is about time. Blizzard have had a few flirtations with player housing, but the core concept has never made it into the game. I remember reading in 2009 that, quote, the fact that Blizzard has refused to implement some form of player housing in WoW remains one of the most bizarre and perplexing decisions in the short history of MMOs. Kind of funny. Insult aside, well, that's now 11 years. That's a little bit. That was a while ago. And since that broad era, Blizzard became way more tight-lipped about player housing. I mean, of course, I think we all know what happened, right? Warlords of Draenor brought in garrisons. Garrisons completely misunderstood what players wanted from player housing, and that was the concept thrown in the bin. I'm pretty sure it's the experience that really made Blizzard just put it in cold storage. But then you gotta think, was Jeff Kaplan right? I mean, player houses didn't save WildStar, they didn't elevate SWTOR to new heights, but a brief glance at Final Fantasy XIV absolutely leaves you thinking. Why not decorate your house with our Patreon rewards? Yeah, I know, pretty smooth one, isn't it? It's Monk Month, so do you like Chinese dragons? Maybe you want a bookmark, maybe the Monk pin, some lovely art from our game team. Do you want this thirst-quenching sticker for your notebook or your laptop? Well, damn, it is our Patreon loot tier. It's the one for you. Once Patreon takes over the end of the month, this month is August, we will send you the month's loot. Pretty simple situation, and it helps us a whole bunch. It's why we're currently hiring, and it helps us out a lot. So, patrons, thank you, and let's go talk about player housing. We've got to start off with the core of player housing. So, player housing, it is a reward for your dedication to the game that you are playing. You get a highly enclosed space, and then what do you do with that? You customize it, you make it your own. It is not a game system that you go and play in a very rigid sense where you go somewhere to kill a bunch of mobs to get a reward. No, it's something that is yours in the world, that is more part of the RPG, an MMORPG. And I think as evidenced by Ian and the team's defense and the reason why they want to have, the Covenant ability swapping, maybe we all agree that more RPG in the MMORPG of WoW would be a good thing. So your player housing, it would start off with a small plot of land, maybe, very basic walls, maybe some small wall tapestries, cutlery, not that much, but with lots of opportunity of all the different things, such you get your basic house and you kind of think, wow, what could I do with this? Well, World of Warcraft doesn't have IKEA, but it does have a lot of game that you can play, and as you advance your character through raiding, PvP, Mythic Plus, archaeology, Brawlers Guild, your professions, literally everything in the game, you could just unlock further upgrades to your small plot. And you may be thinking, Michael, you're very ridiculous and stupid. Why would you say this? Think about how much extra work it would take for Blizzard to put all of those things in the game. And that's when I would say, well, actually, most of the assets, right, the doodads, the models, all of those things, they're kind of made for every zone. They're made in kits. There's really no reason from an art pipeline perspective, as long as the housing system at its core is actually made well, that you couldn't just give players assets that exist in the game and have some sort of rudimentary placement system. That would actually be quite fine. I do believe that is how Final Fantasy XIV and many other games that do systems like this actually do it. So yes, that would mean that you could just get your fun mementos from whatever way you play the game, and you could bring them back to your house, and you can make your house really damn cool. Now, of course, you can have progression of, how big is your plot of land and all of that stuff. Maybe you're the lord of a small keep. It all depends on what way Blizzard would want to do it. But no matter what, it's got to build off something that's really core. And that is the basic human desire to build, to make things. It's a great feeling when you fully decorated your house and your friends are over for the evening, and this is a feeling that can be just taken from IRL into World of Warcraft. And guess what? It already exists in Final Fantasy XIV, because, I was a newbie, I logged in one day, and friends invited me over to their place. I got to see their karaoke booth, their hot tub, and no, this isn't a bit. That was actually in their free company house. It was a pretty cool situation, actually, in Final Fantasy XIV. So, that really just has us thinking, right? About all the different kinds of things you could do with a house beyond just somewhere where there's prestige, somewhere where you hang out, somewhere where you customize. Maybe, like I remember in old school RuneScape back when I played that when I was but a wee lad, being excited because I had a more like cozy chair that I could build in the construction profession. That was quite something. But it can go further, and this actually takes some inspiration from RuneScape, funny enough. You could do a lot more with a player house. How about you do a bunch of work and you end up earning a gladiatorial room where you can host arena-scale matchups? Because RuneScape kind of has that. How about you can make a custom dungeon in your house, maybe full of some of the worst villains you've came across in your adventures? That's also something they did in RuneScape. You can make a little PvE dungeon in your basement. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly elements of the community that would love to make a basement dungeon in World of Warcraft. Absolutely. Oh boy. Now this overall is pretty exciting and interesting to me, the idea of what you could actually do in terms of little game systems and little just sort of group mini games, that you could do. Could you make a pseudo PvE experience? Could you have a moist murloc hole in your basement you could take your friends to, maybe fight some of the murlocs, who knows? But the thing is, this could all be really fun, and importantly, those could all be big time sinks, big parts of player progression that's just a cool thing to do for your character in the world of Warcraft, which at the end of the day, it's an MMO RPG. I think people would really like that. And I mean, come on, imagine inviting your friends over and be like, hey, look at this cool stuff I've done in my house. That could be really exciting. And of course, in the same way that Blizzard can reward you by giving you new mounts, giving you titles, new transmogrification, they can give you new things for your house. That gives them more ways to reward you, which kind of means that their whole game loop is just a bit more greased up and actually sticky, It's got more stuff for you to do and earn. And we've seen the feasibility of some of this, like the music collection from Garrisons, right? Why not do that for your house? Could something like this be developed further and really just, make it so you can discover all these cool tunes for your house? I mean, the whole thing could be a host of never before seen mini games, It could be expanded to have, little template mini games, there's lots of that stuff. I mean, let's even go into other things. Slightly programmable NPCs, got a range of NPCs who are kind of puppets that the house owner, can place about the place. Maybe you hire a butler who can greet people in a way of your choosing. Maybe if you wanted to set up a small RP event where a gang of local bandits were going to, come in, maybe you could do something there. Oh, okay, no, I'll admit that. Those things with AI, I mean, come on, maybe you could use the island AI for that, make some cool little events, but to be honest with you, that would be ludicrously hard to do well in the game. So, point is though, it's a canvas. That's what player housing is. It's a canvas. And that is where we have to talk about garrisons. So Blizzard quoted one of their company philosophies when they talked about garrisons. And they really did it in a way of, this isn't just some, doll dress-up house. This isn't any of that. This is gameplay first. Yeah, gameplay first. It's literally written outside of Blizzard. But I think they took a really, really bad take on what gameplay first actually means when it comes to garrisons. Because think about garrisons. What did gameplay first mean? Well, it meant things that we can unlock, like utility, like the auction house, all of those things, how the garrison tied into player power and progression, all of these things that, yeah, they very much are gameplay in a nuts and bolts sense, but are they gameplay in an emotional context? And you might think, oh, what is this new age stuff you're going to throw down on me? No, what I mean there is, playing dress up with your character is transmogrification, and that's something that's kind of fun. Why? Because you want to earn some cool stuff and you want to look cool. That is gameplay. Are you killing a mob to get a reward that it drops, like some gold that you can then go and spend to repair your gear? No, it's not that, but it is still gameplay. So what I think we need to do for something like this is fully admit it is about player expression, and it's about a new way of rewarding players and actually giving players a space that can really show off their achievements and who they are in the game. That is actually gameplay for humans who are trying to have an escapist experience in the world of Azeroth. That gameplay does not need to be a dungeon that you go into, an enemy that you fight, a new form of power that you gain for your character. I think that is really key, and essentially we cannot learn the wrong lessons from garrisons. Because ultimately with garrisons, they only could have been good, in my view, if they were really focused on that player expression and that element of the player experience, rather than be just this mechanical prison that you kind of stayed in because it was super efficient to do so. Now that also brings us on to some of the other MMO elements. Communities is one idea we had, where you could essentially have communities which would be instanced groups of housing plots, and there'd be a limited number of places per community, but there could be, you know, I mean, it all comes down to server stuff, but maybe 20, 30, 40 plots in a community, and I think that could be quite cool. Maybe you could end up having player prestige be sort of recognized in that community, do little things like that. I could get a little bit, maybe a little bit iffy though, but just the idea of actually having all of that stuff exist in some sort of physical space is a really strong idea, and there is a game that does it, and that is Final Fantasy XIV, with your like free company house plots, where they're actually kind of limited. And it certainly does come with its cons, but it also does mean that if you go to your friend's free company house, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. It's pretty damn cool. So overall, I think that you could get some of that just feeling of your, you know, your house exists in a real 3D space and not just its own little instanced void on your own. You could get some of that if you just had communities of houses, just sort of, you know, have it done like that maybe. But yeah, and there are some problems there, like, you know, oh, what if somebody wants the plot that's facing the sea? Who knows? Maybe there's a way to get around that. To be honest, I think that things like that can just be a little bit of texture that are perfectly fine. And if you just want to go to another community or maybe fire up your own solo one, I guess you should be totally free to do that if you really want to. But you could place these communities literally anywhere based on any tile set that is in the game. An easy way to do it, of course, is to just tie them directly into capital cities. Of course, there's 12 capital cities in the game. That gives players loads of different biomes and vibes for their communities in the same way than Final Fantasy XIV. You can sort of have your player housing areas in the different cities, which just gives you like different vibes. There's a more European feeling one, there's a more Asian feeling one. It's actually a pretty cool system. Now, in terms of ways you could do this, it could be really direct, like, hey, the mages of Stormwind have decided to solve the housing crisis by doing this. Step through a portal, you'll get some new land. Or it could be the kind of thing where it actually does exist in the real world, but as you go into it, maybe there's a way where you can like select which kind of community instance you want to go in. Kind of tricky to know exactly how to do something like that, but you know what? That's actually a problem that has been solved before in games. It's basically just weighing up the different options and deciding which set of pros and cons do we want to go with. But hey, you could have communities in Stormwind, and maybe you could have them be in like Elwyn, Westfall, Lakeshire, Duskwood for biomes. You know, think about what that would be like for Shattrath if you wanted some of those fungal vibes going on in your home. I suppose that, I've been in a student house, don't really want that. Anyway, if Blizzard were to actually sort of take the liberty of updating some of the faction capital cities, it could just be a really nice way to add this stuff in. And as I said, yeah, Final Fantasy XIV does quite a bit of this. If you're somebody who's interested in Final Fantasy XIV, I would heavily recommend that you check out what they do with their free company houses. It's just a very cool concept indeed. Okay, let's take this back to the video game, because professions, I think, need to be a part of this. So first up, if it's tied to professions, then what it does is it actually enshrines it as an expansion spanning system, right? It's just a part of profs, it's a part of the game. I think that's something that's really important for this. If player housing was to be introduced and it just lasted 2 years, and it was a legitimately good system, it would feel terrible for Blizzard to then take it away again. And I think that's just the thing with the game. Yeah, it's cool having these sort of build-around features for expansions, but you know what? Sometimes it'd be nice to have features for World of Warcraft, and not just for current expansion. So maybe there's some thinking there, and maybe there are some things like player housing that would be worth the long-term upkeep. And yes, there would be that upkeep. It would be a significant investment in time and money for Blizzard, so it would have to be implemented in a way that would actually create value for them as a company in the long term. You know, actually be that long-term draw for players. And I really do think that if you hit month 4 or 5 of an expansion, the new patch isn't out yet, maybe working your house is something you can do instead of just logging off, calling it quits, and dropping sub. Second, in terms of reasons, Blizzard are currently trying to make profs relevant again in Shadowlands, and we'll have a more considered conversation about that in the future, but for now, you know, this would just be an obvious way to make professions actually matter more, give them another thing that they hook into. And I think this would be a really natural way for professions to be hooked into a game system. I mean, for blacksmiths, right? They could be making so many things, you know, spokes, hinges, nails, all those sort of little things, maybe even decorative bits of furniture, arms, armor, then enchanting. I mean, come on, look at the Blood Elf city of Silvermoon. You know, look what enchanting was able to do for its vibe. Let's actually make some of that something you can craft for your house. And then there's engineering. I mean, come on, you can just have crazy fun stuff if you bring engineering into it. Then, you know, inscription for paints, tailoring for banners. It just goes on and on. The professions would have to, I would say, also work together to create some of the more complicated pieces as well. You know, a blacksmith could make an armored shell, jewel crafter could provide, you know, some rare, perfectly cut crystals, an engineer could wire the whole thing up, and suddenly you'd have a cool automaton, like automatic guard for your front door. Just a cool thing to be in your house because you earned it. Now then, there's also what I think we should do too, and that is an independent secondary homesteading profession. It's kind of what RuneScape does. RuneScape's got construction. So basically structural stuff for your house, you know, maybe you want to extend the room that you have your mini boss fights in. Maybe you want just like another wing of, or, you know, your hot tub room in your house. Whatever. That could be a really fun part of a profession. Again, another thing to progress and grow with in the game. And then when it goes into interior design, there's a lot of basics of houses like tables, chairs, you know, lights, things like that. RuneScape does those with its construction profession as well. And again, it worked out pretty decently for that game. And also, you know, there'd be sort of fun ways, I think, to bring like the racials in there, you know, like for like the different vibes of some of the different, you know, just the different like groups in the game. You know, maybe you want thunder brew kegs. Maybe you could do some dwarf stuff to unlock that. Do you want a voodoo fetish in your wall? Hit up the trolls. Essentially, right, what you could do with this system is you could grow the economy of World of Warcraft, you could make professions matter more, and you could deeper player involvement in the game and actually give them more ownership over their character and its place in the world, because you've literally given them a space in Azeroth that they can tailor to their liking, that they can invite their friends over, and then ideally that they can maybe do some fun hijinks in. Now, of course, there are challenges, you know, with a system like this, obviously, but you know what? I think that they are worth it, right? There's some obvious things you don't want to do. You know, you don't want to funnel people away from active parts of the game like capital cities, okay? You don't want to do that, obviously. So it'd be essential to make there be very little forms of like good, beneficial gameplay that you need to do, like, you know, the auction house or something like that. You know, no city services like auction houses and stuff. No material gathering, no reason to grind when you're in your house. You know, no things like that. This should be player expression first. I think, though, that going into Warcraft's future, as Blizzard looks for new blood, a player housing system is something they should really just go absolutely deep into. Number one, for existing players, it would just be so cool to finally have that in the game. And number two, right, let's be real, headlines. Headlines. Come on, like, World of Warcraft brings in player housing. The video will do, and that, if that's a BlizzCon announcement, it'll get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views. You know, Asmongold will mention it for 15 minutes on stream, and it'll be clipped onto YouTube, and it'll get several trillion views. You know, T&E can talk about it. Preach can talk about it. Everyone can talk about it. The Twitter sphere can go mad. Then people can start to show off the cool things they've done in their house. In the same way you've got the glam community in Final Fantasy XIV, and how people will make a really dope, like, free company area, you know, free company house in Final Fantasy XIV, and then they'll share it with their friends on Twitter. You know, those things are viral as hell. This could be a real lightning rod to actually get people excited about the idea of World of Warcraft, especially because it's a game that, even though us players maybe don't always feel like it's completely ancient, because it actually does feel pretty good to play in the modern day, you know, it doesn't play like a 20-year-old game, I would say. Well, you know, like 15-year-old game, whatever. But, you know, for a lot of people, they don't know that. They think WoW's some ancient thing that, you know, ancient people play, not cool, hip gamers who play Fortnite and Roblox, and I don't really know, but you get my point, right? This would be like a new thing World of Warcraft is doing that could be really exciting. So yeah, there's a bunch of costs. Absolutely. There's probably a lot of new code that they'd have to write to do a system like this that would actually work. But hey, Blizzard are actually in the mood for redoing code. I mean, Eli Cannon talked about how they've completely revamped their back end for character customizations, which makes iteration far easier for the team. Could this ethos be extended to allowing something like this to happen as well? I mean, let's be real. You also get new customization options for free with a system like this, because you're already making that chair for, you know, the, you know, for a zone, right? For a town and a zone in your new expansions, you know, area, right? Like, they do the Night Elf stuff for Val Shara in Legion. Oh, now they just have all of those interior design assets, and they just put them in a player house. It's work you're doing anyway. You're literally already making those assets. How about you actually give players a way to interact with them in a more real sense, where they feel an ownership over it? I just think it makes complete sense. Player housing, let's do it. And let's not get confused by gameplay first. This is an RPG, role-playing game. Not all of us are going to be slow walking about the place, talking in ye olde speak. We're not going to be doing that. Most people aren't going to be doing that. But, you know what? I think we don't need to take this super like bounded view of RP as people who RP on RP servers. There's just that fantasy of being your character. You know, there's playing Mass Effect, and oh yeah, I'm here playing the role of Commander Shepard in my way, and it's all kind of fun. I feel a bit of an ownership over the way I'm taking this story. Same goes with this is how I'm going to play Geralt, or Geralt. Geralt? Yeah, it is Geralt, in Witcher. You know what I mean? Like, gameplay first is something we need to not be confused about. The way that you play your character, in a lot of the ways that's defined by like how you actually express who your character is, even if that is you playing a role that you're sort of slipping into with a backstory, or it's just you playing you in this game world, no matter what it is. I mean, that's going to be manifested, or like, I think the truest expression of what your character is in the game is, via your sort of manifestation of that in the game world. That's the armor that you wear, it's the way that you type, it's the title that you choose, it's the mount that you ride. It could be the interior of your house, it could be how you want to hunt down cool artifacts in the world via archaeology to bring them back to your house and do something cool for your archaeology room. That's what an RPG is. That's what a role-playing game is. So come on, player housing, let's just do it. I think it makes complete sense. Do you agree? Do you agree? Let me know down below. What would you love to see? What's your greatest hits of player housing in games? And is there stuff that you don't think games have done well before? Do you have a cool new idea for player housing? I mean, hell, if you do, maybe keep it to yourself and try to sell it to somebody at some stage. But if not, drop it down in the comments. That's it for me. Thank you for watching. Player houses, let's talk about them, let's do them. And with that, I'll see you next time.